The message popped up on my phone while I was sipping coffee, a casual group text from my parents. Hey girls, we've decided to keep the spring reunion simple this year, just immediate family at Carla's place. The boys have so much going on with school. We'll plan something bigger next year. Love you. I stared at it for a full minute. No shock, no sharp sting, just that dull, familiar numbness. Carla's place. Immediate family. That phrase always meant everyone but Marisa. I'm Marisa Alvarez. I'm 37 years old, and I live in Lisbon now. I'm an architect, or at least that's what I tell people. The truth is, I own a boutique firm that's somehow still alive despite a brutal first year. None of that matters to my family. To them, I'm just the sister who never settled down, who never had the kids, or the PTA committee, or the Pinterest-perfect life like Carla. I put my phone down and leaned back in my chair, watching the April sunlight hit the tiles outside my apartment. Maybe 5 years ago, I would have cried. Maybe I would have called them, pretending I didn't care while secretly hoping someone would say, "Of course you're invited, honey. We just assumed you'd be busy." But I knew better now. Carla was the golden child, the suburban queen with a sprawling estate in Dallas, 2 perfect sons, and a husband who played golf with my dad. She baked cookies for every school fundraiser. She sent out glossy Christmas cards where everyone wore matching sweaters. And I renovated old wine cellars and spent Easter Sundays alone. This year, though, something was different. Instead of feeling invisible, I thought about my quiet victory, the one nobody knew about. Last autumn, I bought a small crumbling estate near the Douro Valley. No one in my family had even asked where I'd been spending my weekends. Between client projects, I'd been hauling furniture, sketching designs at midnight, sanding floors until my hands ached. It wasn't just a house. It was mine. A place that didn't need anyone's approval. I grabbed my phone again, scrolling past the family chat. Carla's text bubble was full of exclamation points and updates about which caterer she'd hired for the small gathering. I muted the conversation and opened my photo album. There it was. My dining terrace bathed in warm light, overlooking rows of grapevines. The stone fireplace I'd restored with my own hands. The olive trees strung with simple paper lanterns. I smiled for the first time all morning. Maybe I wasn't invited to their Easter table, but I had one of my own now, and I was done waiting for a seat at theirs. A thought started to form. A little spark at first. Maybe I didn't need my parents' reunion at all. Maybe I could create my own. I closed my laptop and stood up, the decision hitting me like a breath of fresh air. This year, Easter would be mine. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a strong espresso in hand. The group chat from my parents was still muted, but I didn't need to read it. I knew Carla would be sharing updates about her small, cozy Easter gathering as if I had been erased entirely. Instead, I opened a fresh email draft. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at their table. I was going to build my own. I started with the names that came easiest. My godmother, Lucia. She had been at every milestone in my life, even flying across the Atlantic to see my first apartment in Lisbon when no one else cared. Then Uncle Mateo, who used to slip me extra pastelitos when I was a kid, whispering that I was his favorite. I added my cousins, Rosa and her little ones, Danny and his partner from Madrid, even Aunt Isabel, who hadn't left Spain in nearly a decade, but always called me on my birthday. The message was simple but heartfelt. I'd love for you to spend Easter weekend with me at my estate in the Douro Valley. I've been renovating it for months, and it's finally ready to host something special. There will be wine tastings, a farm-to-table chef, horseback rides through the vineyards, and an Easter brunch on the terrace. Bring the kids. Bring whoever feels like family. I hit send and, for the first time in years, felt a lightness in my chest. By that evening, my inbox was full of replies. Rosa wrote, "We'll be there. The kids are going to lose their minds." Mateo sent a voice note, his deep laugh filling my kitchen. "Finally, Marisa, you've been hiding this place from us too long. I'm bringing my appetite and a few bottles from my cellar." Danny confirmed within minutes, adding that he'd already booked his flight from Madrid. Even Aunt Isabel, who hadn't traveled since her hip surgery, wrote, "I wouldn't miss it for the world." I closed my laptop, grinning. It wasn't just about having guests. It was about knowing who had shown up for me when it mattered. The next day, I drove out to the estate. The morning fog still clung to the hills, but the sight of my renovated stone house rising from the vineyard made my heart swell. I walked through the terrace, picturing the long Easter table set with pastel linens and fresh flowers. I called the chef I'd met in Porto to finalize the weekend menu: roasted lamb with rosemary, orange zest cakes, local cheeses, fresh bread from the village bakery. By the time I hung up, I had a new vision for Easter. It wouldn't be about fitting into someone else's version of family. It would be about curating my own. People who laughed loudly, who didn't measure love by appearances or perfection. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait for the holiday to come. A week before Easter, my phone rang with my mother's name flashing on the screen. I almost didn't answer. Calls from her usually came with a mix of small talk and subtle reminders that Carla was so busy and such a good mother. But I pressed accept anyway, bracing myself. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, drawing out the word like she was trying to sound extra tender. "I just wanted to check on you. Are you holding up okay? I know it's hard being, well, alone this time of year." There it was. That word. Alone. I leaned against the kitchen counter and stared at the half-folded napkins I'd picked for Easter brunch. "I'm fine, Mom. I won't be by myself." "Oh?" I could hear her perk up. "That's good. Are you spending time with some coworkers? Or maybe your neighbors? It's nice to have company when you don't have family close by." I bit my tongue, letting the silence stretch. It wasn't worth explaining. Not once had she asked about my plans, my work, or even what I wanted for holidays. To her, I was the extra, the one she didn't quite know how to fit in the picture. "Something like that," I said vaguely. She sighed, clearly ready to pivot to talking about Carla's kids and their hectic schedules, but I cut the call short. "I have to go, Mom. Talk later." Before she could respond, I pressed end. For a moment, I just stood there, phone still warm in my hand. No matter how old I got, that conversation always left a familiar ache. It wasn't anger. It was the quiet realization that I would never be the priority. Not to her. The sound of tires on gravel pulled me out of my thoughts. A silver hatchback rolled up the long drive, and my godmother, Lucia, stepped out, waving like she was arriving at her second home. Mateo climbed out of the passenger seat, stretching and grinning. "So this is the famous estate," he called. I met them halfway, suddenly lighter. Lucia hugged me tight, holding me a beat longer than I expected. She looked around at the terraced vineyards, the olive trees swaying in the breeze. "They don't deserve this view," she whispered in my ear. "But we do." I laughed, the tension in my chest finally breaking. In that moment, I stopped caring who hadn't shown up. I had my people, and they were right here. The estate began to hum with life 2 days before Easter. It started with the sound of tires crunching on gravel, followed by the voices of Rosa's kids tumbling out of her SUV. I stepped onto the terrace just in time to see little Sophia sprint toward the lemon trees, her curls bouncing, while her brother Thomas chased her with a plastic basket he'd brought for the egg hunt. Rosa waved from the driveway. "Marisa, this place is unreal," she said, her voice cracking with excitement. Soon after, Danny arrived from Madrid with his partner Javier, who had never celebrated Easter before. "You'll love it here," I told him, handing him a glass of Vinho Verde. He grinned shyly and said, If all holidays are like this, I might become religious. Within hours, the once quiet property was filled with energy. Elderly Aunt Isabel stepped out of the rental car, wearing a wide-brimmed floral hat and holding on to Mateo's arm. "I didn't think I'd ever travel again," she said, looking around in awe. "But for you, Marisa, I had to see this." I hugged her gently, promising that the best was yet to come. The wine cellar I had converted into a lounge quickly became everyone's favorite spot. Lucia uncorked bottles from local vineyards, while Mateo passed around plates of soft cheese and fresh bread. Children darted between the olive trees, their laughter echoing off the old stone walls. Danny pulled out his guitar, settling on the patio steps, and soon we were all humming along as he played an acoustic version of an old Spanish folk song. That evening, I guided everyone to the old stone oven I had painstakingly restored. We baked sweet Easter bread, braided with ribbons of citrus zest. The smell of warm sugar and orange peel drifted across the courtyard, mixing with the earthy scent of the vineyard at dusk. Rosa and I helped the kids dye eggs in buckets of natural dyes. Beets for red, spinach for green, turmeric for gold. Sophia held up a pale pink egg and whispered, "It's too pretty to hide." Paper lanterns hung from the olive branches, swaying softly as twilight settled in. Wine glasses clinked, conversations overlapped, and I caught myself just standing there, soaking it all in. This place, once a silent, crumbling ruin, was alive. It wasn't just the house. It was me. After dinner, we gathered under the string lights on the terrace. Danny played a slow, sweet tune on his guitar, while Mateo poured one last round of tawny port. I raised my glass, my voice slightly shaky but firm. "To the people who always showed up," I said, glancing around at the circle of familiar faces, even when others didn't. Lucia smiled, her eyes glossy in the lamplight. "To Marisa," she added, lifting her glass, "for giving us the kind of Easter we'll never forget." The night ended with laughter and music, the estate glowing like a sanctuary. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just hosting a gathering. I was exactly where I belonged. The morning of Easter began with the smell of orange zest drifting from the kitchen, mixing with the savory aroma of rosemary lamb roasting in the oven. A soft fog clung to the fields beyond the vineyard, turning the rows of grapevines into hazy silhouettes. I stood on the terrace for a moment, wrapped in a light sweater, breathing it all in. It felt like the kind of morning I had always wanted to remember. Lucia was already outside, tying pastel linens onto the long table we'd set under the pergola. Buckets of spring flowers, wild tulips, daisies, and sprigs of lavender waited to be arranged. "It's like a painting," she said as she adjusted a napkin, stepping back to admire her own work. The kids were busy tearing through the lemon grove, shouting each time they spotted a golden egg hidden in the branches or tucked behind a tree trunk. Thomas, triumphant, held one high above his head and yelled, "This one's mine!" while Sophia squealed and lunged for the next one. Their laughter rang through the air like music. Inside, the farm-to-table chef I'd hired was plating small pastries dusted with powdered sugar, each one topped with a slice of candied orange peel. I carried a tray out to the terrace, where Mateo was pouring glasses of sparkling Vinho Verde. "Marisa," he said, handing me one, "this is how Easter is supposed to feel, like we're celebrating life, not just the calendar." A local photographer I'd hired quietly snapped photos in the background, capturing moments I didn't even notice at first. Rosa kissing her baby's nose, Aunt Isabel laughing mid-toast, Danny teaching Javier how to peel an orange without breaking the rind. When he turned the lens toward me, I was holding my glass and smiling, the sunlight warm on my face. Then my phone buzzed on the table beside me. A text. I didn't need to check the name to know who it was from. "Carla, hope you're surviving Easter alone. Mom said we could Zoom if you're bored." I stared at the message for a second, my fingers hovering over the screen. Alone. It was almost laughable. Around me, the terrace was alive. Children running, Lucia humming as she adjusted the silverware, Mateo's booming laugh carrying across the courtyard. I locked the phone and slid it face down, choosing not to give her words a single moment of my joy. As the chef brought out the lamb, perfectly golden, everyone took their seats at the long table. I raised my glass, not for a speech, but simply to soak in the moment, the warmth of real connection, of people who wanted to be here. I didn't feel excluded anymore. I felt whole. I was on the terrace clearing empty glasses when my phone started buzzing. My mother's name lit up the screen. For a second, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but I answered, still smiling from Mateo's last toast. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Marisa?" Her tone was tight, like she was straining to sound casual. "I just wanted to check in. See how you're doing today. Easter can feel lonely sometimes." I glanced around. Rosa was laughing so hard she nearly dropped her fork. The kids were still running in and out of the lemon grove, squealing over the last few golden eggs. Behind me, the photographer was snapping another shot of the table, catching the warm glow of sunlight on the pastel linens. "I'm not alone," I said, my voice soft but steady. There was a pause. "Oh, well, that's good. Are you with some coworkers? Or neighbors, maybe?" "No," I said simply, resting my free hand on the back of a chair. "I'm hosting Easter brunch at the estate." Silence. Then, "The what?" Her voice cracked on the word. "The estate I bought last year, out in the Douro Valley." I could hear the sound of my cousins in the background, cheering as Tomas cracked open a golden egg filled with chocolate coins. "You bought property?" My mother's tone jumped from confusion to disbelief. "When? How did I not know about this?" "You never asked," I replied. The words slipped out quietly but landed like stones. I could hear her inhale sharply. I didn't realize you were doing all this on your own." "Mom," I said, watching Lucia refill glasses of Vinho Verde, "you didn't want me at your Easter, so I built my own." The photographer clicked another picture. Me holding my phone with one hand, a glass of wine in the other, sunlight catching the edge of my hair. Kids squealed nearby as the lamb was set on the table. "Marisa, that's not fair," my mother started, but I didn't feel like debating what was fair. Not anymore. "I have to go," I said, cutting her off gently. "My guests are waiting." I hung up before she could respond, sliding the phone into my pocket. When I turned back to the table, Lucia raised her glass and winked. "They don't deserve this view," she said with a grin. "But we do." By Monday morning, the photographer's work was ready. He sent me a gallery link with a note. "Your family glows here. I hope you're proud of this place." I clicked through the images slowly, savoring each one. Rosa and her kids laughing under the lemon trees. Mateo mid-toast, his glass catching the late afternoon sun. Lucia leaning back in her chair with a satisfied smile, the vineyard stretching out behind her. And me, standing at the head of the table, laughing, hair windswept, a glass of sparkling wine in my hand. Lucia asked if she could share the photos, and I told her yes. By noon, she had posted an album titled "A New Easter, A New Home." Her caption read, "Family is who shows up. Thank you, Marisa, for creating this beautiful weekend for all of us." The likes and comments rolled in fast. Friends, old neighbors, even distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years were writing things like, "What a gorgeous celebration," and "This looks like a dream." I didn't think much of it, until my phone started buzzing with messages that weren't so cheerful. First came Carla. "Carla, what is this?" I ignored it. A few minutes later, Carla. "Mom's getting calls from her church friends asking why they weren't part of that Easter event. She's embarrassed, Marisa. People think we excluded you. I nearly laughed out loud. Think we excluded you? I typed back. You did. There was a pause, then another text. Carla. Mom is upset. She said she's getting questions from neighbors about why she wasn't invited to your brunch. Our summer plans with them might be ruined. And the kids are restless now. Why would you post all this? I stared at her words, a wave of calm confidence washing over me. For years, I had been the invisible one. Now they were feeling what I'd felt time and time again. I wrote, now you know what it feels like to be left out. No response came. Later that day, Mateo called to tell me that an old family friend, Aunt Sophia, had rung him up just to gush about the photos. She said it looked like the happiest Easter she'd seen in years, Mateo said with a chuckle. You should be proud of yourself. I was, not just of the estate, but of the joy we'd created together. When I checked social media again, the album had spread further, shared by Rosa, Danny, and even Javier, who captioned his post, "This is what family should feel like." For once, I wasn't the one left explaining why I wasn't included. My parents and Carla could field the awkward questions this time. I was too busy planning the next gathering in my head, one where every single face at the table wanted to be there. The call came 2 days later, just as I was walking through the vineyard with a basket of leftover bread for the ducks by the pond. My father's name lit up the screen. He rarely called. Usually Mom was the messenger. So I answered, curious. Marisa, he said, his voice softer than I expected, almost rehearsed. I've been thinking about you. I didn't respond right away. I let him fill the silence. I saw the photos from Easter, he continued. Looked beautiful. You've built something really special there. He cleared his throat, like the words were sticking. Your mom and I, we want to talk about reconciling. Maybe we can all start fresh. Christmas is coming, and it might be nice to spend it together. You know, as a family. The way he said family made my jaw tighten. A family, I repeated. Like when I was uninvited to the reunion because it was just immediate family? Or when every holiday has revolved around Carla's schedule, while I got a polite text after the fact? There was a pause, longer this time. I could hear him exhale slowly. That wasn't right, he said finally. I'll admit that. And it didn't feel good this time, seeing those pictures and realizing we weren't there. I guess that's how you felt for years, huh? Exactly, I said, my voice steady. I don't want this to get worse, Marisa, he said. Your mother's upset. Carla's embarrassed. Can't we just move on? Move on, I repeated, tasting the words. Dad, I've spent years pretending I wasn't hurt. I've flown home for holidays where no one asked me a single thing about my life. I started my own firm. No one celebrated. I bought this estate. You didn't even know. So no, I can't just move on. Not until you admit what happened. There was silence on the line, broken only by the distant chatter of birds around me. Finally, he said, You're right. We took you for granted. And it didn't feel good this time. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Good. Then you understand. Before he could pivot into guilt or smoothing things over, I said goodbye and ended the call. My hands weren't shaking. My chest wasn't tight. For the first time, I felt like I had said exactly what needed to be said. No more, no less. By Tuesday morning, the estate was quieter, though the warmth of the weekend still clung to the air like the scent of citrus and wine. Cars were lined up on the gravel drive, trunks open, cousins packing leftover sweetbread and jars of local honey I'd gifted them. Kids waved colorful eggs from the back seats, bragging about who had found the golden prize egg. Lucia was the last to leave. She hugged me tightly, the kind of hug that made my throat tighten. You gave us something special, Marisa, she said, holding me at arm's length. Don't you dare stop here. What about Christmas? I grinned. Already handled. I rented a private villa in Tuscany, the one with olive groves and that massive stone fireplace. We'll make new traditions. Matteo chuckled as he loaded the last suitcase. Well, if you need someone to taste test the local wine there, I volunteer. We laughed, and then the driveway fell silent as the final car disappeared down the road. I stood there for a while, letting the quiet settle in, the sun warming my shoulders. Inside, the terrace table was still set with pastel linens and half-wilted flowers, a beautiful reminder that the weekend had been real, not just a fleeting dream. I began clearing glasses, smiling as I recalled Rose's kids running in circles, Danny teaching Javier how to roll dough, and the late-night toasts under the paper lanterns. Then my phone buzzed. A new message. Mom, we'd like to talk about Christmas. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the screen. A few months ago, I would have opened the message immediately, searching for some scrap of approval or an invitation to belong. But now, I let it sit unread, slipping the phone face down onto the counter. Moments later, another notification popped up, this time from the photographer. He'd sent the final image of the weekend, a shot he'd saved for last. It was me, standing between two rows of grapevines, arms slightly open, my head tipped back toward the sun. Alone, but radiating something I hadn't felt in years. Certainty. I saved the photo without a second thought. It didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom. The house was quiet, but not empty. I walked out to the terrace and looked over the vineyard, still glowing in the late afternoon light. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about the family I had tried so hard to please. I was thinking about the people who had chosen to show up, and about the life I was building. One holiday, one gathering, one moment of joy at a time. I wasn't excluded anymore. I had simply stepped into my own story,